Hi, I am Jenna.
And I am Roshel.
And we were both raised in fundamentalist groups and are here to share our religious deconstruction with you. Okay, so spill the tea.
Okay.
First story, go.
Okay. All right. So, one of the bigger churches, like within the districts of the Pentecostal church that I attended, was not even joking. It had got out they were behind on their taxes, right? And they had done all these efforts to raise money, and they ended up not being able to get the money in time. And the day before the church was going to be foreclosed on, there was a fire. I'm not kidding. The church burned all the way
to the ground.
It burned all the way to the ground. All the records, everything burned to the ground. And the settlement they got from that, they were able to pay the taxes off. And so
how much did they owe in taxes?
I don't know how much I don't know the amount that they owed, but I know however much they got from the settlement was enough to cover everything. Yeah.
So did they regroup as a church or no?
Yeah, they stayed as a church. They fellowshipped at a different church until, they were able to rebuild their own church.
So do you know for sure they burned it down?
I know. From what I heard. Obviously, I don't know firsthand, but
from what you heard,
what I heard,
they straight burned it down. Don't they do investigations on big fires like that?
Yeah, but not a lot of times. I don't think with churches and stuff. Maybe not. I don't know. But in this case, I know that's what happened because I obviously saw the church
crazy.
Get rebuilt and everything.
So it's essentially insurance fraud.
Yeah,
because they burned it down themselves.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
But I mean,
yeah. Good start. Okay. Burn your own church to the ground. That's insane. So the next one is one you know this one as well. So we have some overlap because we did go to the same church for a little bit. So essentially, I'm trying to figure out how I want to refer to these people. We'll call them Mike and Molly. Okay, those are the two. We'll call the couple Mike and Molly. Okay. So essentially, Mike and Molly were a married couple in the church leadership. And Mike served on multiple teams, but was a prominent worship pastor and, led some other things as well. And Molly, his wife, Molly was, very prominent in the church and they were related to the first family and yeah, all that drama. So essentially, Mike begins to lead a workout class and meets a lot of people. But they start a workout class and Mike starts training. Well, he starts training particularly hard with one individual. I'm trying to think of a name. Let's say Sally, okay? So Sally joins this workout club. Well, Mike and Sally seem to be doing a lot of one-on-one training, which seemed decently innocent at the time, until it comes out that, of course, oh, surprise, they were having an affair. That's not that uncommon, right? We see this happen all the time. But that's not the scandalous part. The scandalous part is kind of what happened afterwards. First, Mike never stepped down out of leadership to my knowledge. I don't think at all. Yeah. So,
not that I can recall.
Not that I can recall. And I think they took Mike off of the stage of the worship team. But I think he was still getting paid and everything. I don't think he ever, I don't think anything ever stopped that way. And then later they went on to find Mike a job at another church once it was kind of obvious that it was just too public, it wasn't going to work out. They actually got him a job at another church. And he's still at that other church, but not the point. So the point is they basically have Mike stand on stage with his poor wife, Molly, in tow, because that's what Christian women do. They have to stand by their cheating man, which is ridiculous. But they made them do this publicly on stage. okay, that seems like some accountability. But the worst part, I think, was now in retrospect, I see how bad it was. This Sally was a mom of 3 kids, and they essentially completely kicked her out of the church, which their reasoning at the time was because Molly went to the church, and Molly was innocent in all of this, and she had nothing to do with it, and it wasn't fair for her to have to see the person that, her husband had an affair with, which I don't necessarily disagree with that. But what I do disagree with is kind of not kicking them both out.
Yeah.
Like, I think you kind of have to kick them both out. And then I think the other thing is you have to remember, like, the community aspect of church and, like, how much of a bond that is. And it's essentially an emotional trauma bond. But it is a bond, and they just completely ostracized her. And, like, when you're out of a church, you're out,
Yeah.
Like, I was at that church for 12 years. No, more than 12 years, and nobody talks to me, right? Like, nobody has since the day I left. So it's like, anyway, so now I feel really bad in retrospect. At the time, I'm like,
I do too. Because, like, I was around Sally during that time.
Mm-hmm.
We were sort of friends throughout it with, kind of talked about it a little bit. And I remember her saying, like, I just want to say that I'm sorry. Like, no one understands how it happened. And I was like, I don't know how old I was, maybe like 19. I don't remember how, it was a long time ago, but I was young. I just remember thinking like, well, like thinking to myself like, well, you did what you did. But looking back, like, there could have been so many other things that was going on, obviously, that I didn't understand. And it was made to seem like she was the bad guy.
Yeah.
And then I felt like eventually I had to make a choice between like Sally or Molly.
Yeah.
I couldn't be friends with both. Or if I was friends with Sally, then Molly and Molly's like whole group would like not be friends with me kind of thing,
Yeah.
And I was like really good friends with all of them. And so I feel bad that I like kind of turned my back on Sally and just left her.
I mean, you're right. I did the same thing. And I did the same thing, same reason for Molly and Molly's family. Now, I was really close with Molly. And she straight told me, like, she straight asked me to take her off of like my social medias and stuff. And when she did ask me, it was actually really sweet. She's like, I know I don't have any right to tell you this, but like, she was essentially saying you know how you can see friends of friends stuff? So she was still having to see her on her feed all the time.
That's rough.
And so like, I get that from the social media aspect and everything, that makes sense. And I deleted her off, but I also cut her off because I was like, oh, I can't do that to Molly. Even though I was also friends with Sally at a point, I wasn't ever that close with her.
Yeah.
But it was like, we knew each other, like.
Yeah.
And so, I do feel bad about that too. And then, like, did she ever tell you like how it happened?
No, she never did. I feel so bad for how I handled it. Did not handle it the right way.
Yeah, same.
And I think at that age I just didn't know. It was way bigger than me. You know what I mean? It was way bigger than I could have even imagined.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I feel bad about it. Still feel bad about like how I acted in that situation.
Same. And what the other thing like I didn't even think in the time is like honestly the power dynamic of it. Because Mike is this person that's respected as like a leader in the church, has been like a long-standing leader in the church, is on stage visibly in front of people, and then he's also a coach to her in this quote unquote ministry, working out. And I think back to the power dynamic between her and him, her freshly off of like a really bad divorce, like with a crazy person, like we knew him, and like, and so I'm like, she had like 3 kids, and like I understand how she was in a vulnerable spot that could very easily succumb to like a power indifference like that. And because even though it's supposed power, again, it's not like her boss or anything, but if you're very indoctrinated in the church, it kind of is. It's more important than that. And so, and like, that's one thing I never even thought of till I left the church. But
yeah, I definitely did not handle that situation the best that I could have.
Yeah. Sorry, Sally, if you ever
hear this. Seriously. So sorry. It's like one of those, like, if I saw her, would I apologize? Like, if I did, I would be doing it solely for myself. Why would I bring up something that was probably so
Yeah.
traumatizing to her, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, you're right. It'd just be selfish reasons. But all right, one's with a sad ending. But
yeah.
On to, I mean, I think all of them are going to be kind of sad endings.
Yeah,
honestly.
they're probably.
Okay, so I know you have another one that I know.
Yeah,
about.
I have just something that is interesting, I think, kind of in the church. And it happens like fairly often. So I feel like pastors cheating on their wives is like pretty common.
Pretty common, yeah.
It's very common in my church. Like at one point it was like happening all the time. It wasn't even surprising anymore. So you have like multiple pastors that are holding these titles like superintendent or bishop or, you know, whatever, that are cheating on their wives and doing all these things. And you have women who will get turned down for being able to hold a position if they've had more than one husband. So
it's just like such a double standard.
It's such a double standard.
So what accountability process did they have for pastors?
There's no accountability process. It's like, do they like you? Do you give the most money? Are you doing what they ask you to do? You know what I mean?
And do they do the same thing where they encourage wives to stay?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Always,
yeah.
And it's like I would always hear with, you know, because, you know, I worked in a church, and this isn't necessarily a specific example, but kind of around that. You know, people came for counseling and stuff, and sometimes I would sit in. Anyways, it's a whole other subject. But you know, that it was very highly pushed on women to stay, and it was very like, you don't want to be responsible for breaking up your family. Like, you had anything to do with it. You know, it was very discouraged for women to leave. And even they would always preface it with like, although like, you know, you do have a biblical standing now. Like, it's like honestly, women in bad marriages in churches are just like praying to God their husbands cheat on them, so they have a biblical reason.
Seriously.
And you have some denominations that don't believe even physical abuse is a reason for leaving, like not a biblical reason. They say it's biblical. It's okay to separate, but it's not okay, like, get out of immediate danger, but you can't divorce them.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck? Like, that doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah.
But in you know, in retrospect, I look back and be like, what? But, and you know, and it kind of reminds me of, you know, Molly. And I know Molly was, in the previous story, was heavily pressured to stay with Mike. And she did. So, you know, anyways, it's just, I don't know. It's sad. It's
very
sad that
sad.
there's no accountability for that. And the double standard between men and women in leadership there.
It's like, it's big time.
Did they ever have any females that cheated, that got addressed or was public?
No. So I had a situation where I witnessed firsthand a like cheating situation where that just like went wrong.
How does it go?
Yeah.
right?
So no, it went so far wrong.
What?
So
No,
the husband and wife went to church together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So husband and wife married, they're together. So this other lady over here is not married. We'll call her unmarried. What can we call her?
Call her Regina.
Regina.
I don't know why.
Okay, that'll work.
Call Regina.
We'll call her Regina. So Regina was not married. So their husband and wife is married. Regina's not married. So Regina is sleeping with the husband that's, you know, that's married. So the wife finds out. The wife goes in church, goes to Regina and is like, I know you're sleeping with my husband. Yes, I know you're sleeping with my husband and you need to stop. And Regina's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then the wife pulls out text messages, like screenshots, like, yes. And Regina like takes off out of the church.
Running?
Yes, she gets out of the church. The husband comes down, like gets the wife, like, what are you doing? Like, we're in church. Yes,
It's
I'm
like
not
during
kidding
a
you.
service.
It's like in the intermission. So you'll have like the first service and then like a little intermission where everybody's just like sitting around talking for maybe like 10, 15 minutes. And so that's kind of like when it happened.
I feel like, you know, it's a black church when you have intermission.
Oh man. when an intermission is necessary.
Oh my God, is that like, I don't know if that's racist of me, but
no. Definitely not. It's true.
I remember, this is like a side anecdote that has nothing to do with the scandal, but the first time I went to a black church, I swear we were there for like 8 hours, and I was like, what is happening? Like, I remember, it was super, super duper funny, and they ended up making us get up and lead a song later, and I didn't even go to that church. So, it was funny. But anyways, that's not the point. But, you just remind me of that. I remember just being so like, what is happening? I'm hungry.
I'm ready to go.
But there was food at the end.
There's always food at the end.
That's like gotta get you.
There's always food at the end.
Oh my god. Okay, so let's see. Oh, this is one that you don't know. So I've talked about, like, I worked at a church, but I don't think I mentioned I actually worked at 2 churches at the same time. So while I was at the church that you and I went to, there was a new church that was opening really close to where I live. Through a long series of events, somehow I get connected with the pastor that's going to be at this church, and it's like supposed to be, the church for non-church goers, which is, what you laugh because that's every fucking church, right? So they were going to be super crazy and have service on Saturday night instead of Sunday. So that was how I was able to do both at the same time, because I was a worship leader at the time at the church you and I went to. So basically through a bunch of mutual pastors and friends, they found out like I was a worship leader and connected us. When they asked, like, hey, would you like to, essentially, like, if I'd like to come and, like, work there with their Saturday night services, and it wouldn't overlap with the other church, whatever. So I did. I went over there, and I worked there for maybe, like, a year. So, like, they were still building when I first started there. So I, like, literally helped them build this church, right?
Oh, wow.
Like, because they were in, like, anyways.
I never knew this.
That's, yes. So that's where I worked with our mutual friend that passed. That's where we were together at that church. She did the children's ministry there.
Gotcha.
So anyways, so I was, because it was a brand new church, they have nothing. I'm been, lifetime around musicians, and they have all shitty stuff. Well, my father does work in the music industry, and he has shit ton of equipment, right? So he gives me a bunch of equipment to use at this church. And we were very explicit, like, hey, we'll use this in the interim, whatever, like full drum sets, speakers, all this stuff. So I'm there for quite a while, I think about a year. And then I get to practice one Friday, because we usually practice on Friday, and the pastor like calls me over to his office before we're supposed to have practice, and essentially lets me go with like no reason, nothing. And I was just like in such shock, because I literally had a practice about to start, and I don't even know who led it. I don't know anything. It was just like I was in shock. I was like, what? And so like I just kind of like walked to my car. I didn't say anything, like nothing.
That's so weird.
I walked to my car and I was like, what just happened? Well, so a week later, I text them and saying like, hey, I still have keys. Like, I need to give you like the keys to the building, and I need to come and pick up all of my dad's equipment. No response. So like I'm texting now. I'm calling. Well, there's now church administrators and stuff that I'm trying to get a hold of. Pastor's not in. Well, we have to wait for pastor. Blah blah blah. Okay, like I cannot get a hold of anyone. So I finally just go up to the church. And the building, so it was actually 2 separate buildings. The building where all the equipment is locked with a different key than the key I had to the main building. So I turned in my keys to the main building. I don't have any way to access the stuff. Kept asking, getting no response. I'm like, can anybody open the door, let our equipment out? So literally within a month, the pastor left that church. He took all the equipment, packed it up, and left with it. And then there was, the person that founded the church wasn't actually the pastor. Anyways, it's a whole long story. But, so I started talking to her, because her and I had a really good relationship. And I'm like, look, can you get a hold of him? Because he had told her that that was all his equipment. And he was going to take it, blah, 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 whatever. But then the worst part was, not the worst, but like, another part that made it like even worse is like she did nothing to even try to like put me in contact with him, like get my stuff back. Like she just didn't even care. She was just like, oh well, sorry, and hired a new pastor. And so like, yeah, my dad was out like literally thousands of dollars worth of equipment.
Dang.
And I was just like so embarrassed too, like with my family. I was just like, what am I, like, you know?
Sorry.
Yeah, because I didn't even, anyways, so that was the whole thing. But yeah, they straight stole my dad's stuff. And just
gone.
And then the person that founded, that was, she was basically the money, right, for the whole thing. The person that founded the church didn't care. She was very well off. Like she could have very easily replaced the equipment. Like there was a reason she was footing the bill for a teeny tiny church. Like she had money.
Yeah.
And yeah, didn't care, didn't even try to help. And
that is crazy.
Just ghosted. Yeah. So that's my pastor's stealing story. All right, what's your next one? Oh wait, we actually, before the next, we have 3 last ones we're gonna close with. But before we get there, we do want to have like some sort of trigger warning. You know, potentially content that could be, I guess, disturbing to people, like that has topics of violence and child abuse. Yeah. All right, you go first.
So the first one I experienced firsthand again. And it's sad. It's definitely a sad kind of story. So this guy in church, we'll call him Tim.
Okay.
So Tim and his son weren't very close. Tim's a pastor in the church. Mm-hmm. Him and his son's like 19. Him and his son aren't very close, but his son is close with one of the girls in the church. We'll call her Melissa.
Okay.
Melissa's the other girl in the church. She's 19, just like Tim.
Okay.
Or Tim's son. They're friends, right?
Okay.
So Tim goes to, what are we gonna call her? Melissa?
Yes.
Melissa, yeah.
I think that's what we said.
I think we said Melissa.
I think it's Melissa now.
Yeah. There's Melissa now. So he goes to her and he's like, hey, have you talked to my son? And she's like, yeah, I have. And he's like, well, where is he? And she's like, oh, well, he, if he wanted you to know where he was, he would let you know. He would tell you himself.
Sassy little 19-year-old.
Because his son didn't want him to know. His son had joined the military. He was away. He just kind of didn't want anything to do with his dad.
So he didn't live with him or anything?
No, he didn't live with his dad. He wouldn't run from
This is an adult.
home. Yeah, he's a grown up. He's in the military.
Yeah.
He just didn't have a relationship with his dad because he didn't care to have a relationship with his dad.
Got it.
But he's still friends with her. And so she's like, yeah, if he wants you to know, he'll tell you. Like, I'm not gonna rat him out. And he's like, well, give me his phone number. And she's like, no, if he wanted you to have it, he would give it to you. Mm-hmm. And then he proceeds to say, you better tell him to call me or I will beat you over the head with this chair.
What?
This is a grown man talking to a
19-year-old.
Probably 18, 19-year-old at the time. Yeah, telling her that. And this is during the intermission time too.
This is at church. The church.
At church during intermission.
Picturing him at her apartment,
no.
You know where my son is?
Nope. This is at church.
What?
Yeah. So of course it starts like a big ruckus. Like everybody kind of starts arguing, and Tim ends up apologizing, saying literally I'm sorry, got the best of me. I just missed my son. Blah 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 blah. Right. So of course everybody else, the rest of us are mad. We're are you kidding me? This seriously just did you really just do this? And then the head pastor, which happens to be Tim's father, gets up and is he apologized. Let's move on. And that's the last thing that they said about it.
And everybody was cool with it.
Everybody just kind of of course behind the scenes they're well, I think this needs to happen, or it's not okay that he did that, but no one did anything. No one stood up for her. You know what I'm saying? No one did anything. So imagine how it must have felt to be her. All these grown-ups around her.
In the
church. And she doesn't go to the church to this day. And I feel they don't understand why you don't understand why she doesn't go to church. I understand why she doesn't go to church, because she was threatened in church, and the people that were supposed to protect her did nothing.
That's insane.
Did not hold him accountable whatsoever, and he kept on. And this same guy, and I'm not exaggerating this number at all, has been married 6 times.
And he's still a pastor.
He is still a pastor, currently separated from his wife, and dating someone else.
Okay, well,
I am not joking.
How do they justify that?
They don't. No one's gonna question. People are gonna talk at home and say, oh, well, this should happen or that should happen.
Then why do they continue to go?
That's a great question. And I feel like
I don't know.
because we're not cult members, we don't understand the logic.
That's insane.
It's insane. They just sit back and let these things happen or talk about it behind the scenes, but when it comes to like standing up and saying this is not okay and I'm not gonna just let this happen, no one's doing it.
And the worst part of the whole situation, like obviously the situations suck that we're talking about, but I think what's like a double like slap in the face is how much they're preaching something different from the pulpit than is being enforced with the people that are saying these the rules.
Yeah.
It's like, going up and saying like everybody, goes on the count of 3, but then they run at 1 every time. It's like it doesn't like you're the one that set the rules. Like,
yeah.
It doesn't
tough.
make any sense.
I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday and she was saying like it's just so hard to find a good church to plug into, and she's like, I'm really trying to like find somewhere to go. Yeah, and she's like, I was at this one church. She was like, I went for a couple years and I really, really enjoyed it. But then like I found out the pastor like cheated on his wife. Mm-hmm. And she's like, and that just ruined it for me. And she's like, they took him out of leadership, so he wasn't the pastor anymore. But like he was still there, and he was like still, and like he was the reason why I like going to the church. And now I've lost faith in this guy. And that's what I think happens to a lot of people. And so it's either finding out what you actually believe, or it's trying to figure it out on your own, or just looking past these things that are immoral and that happen, because like they say, everybody makes mistakes.
But the problem is, which we'll get into with the next couple of stories, but it's beyond just I say from the pulpit that lying is wrong or divorce is wrong, but then I go and divorce or I lie. That's one thing, because those are legal.
Yeah.
The part that gets, I think, even worse when you start getting further and further into church scandals, like I think the ones we started with are like decently light, and even the ones we're ending with are kind of like, because we're only saying like firsthand, this is exactly what I saw, but it goes way beyond that into straight illegal activity. Yes. Like, I mean, honestly, even the first one, you said, well, that's illegal to burn down a church, like, or to commit, not burn it. It's illegal to what is the word I'm looking for? Insurance fraud. Yeah. To burn it down and act like it was from natural causes and collect the insurance, right? So like, that's totally different, because now we're talking about something illegal. You can't just go around threatening to hit people over the head with a chair, and not only just hold your title, but then have no legal consequences. And it's like so I know, so this one's a little harder to explain, but there was a church we did go to briefly after we left the church that you and I went to together. When I stepped down out of leadership there, we did go to another church for maybe like a year or so. There was a group there that they had, a lot of churches have them now, where they call them like, they're only for men, of course, and they call them like, they're essentially for guys that are into porn. We're just being honest. It's like mostly like porn, or they're like into some shit, whatever. Or like they call them sex addict, whatever. Yeah. But they had a group there, and so the group was run by church members that have no fucking clue about any like sort of like psychology, and they're essentially counseling these people. But a step worse than that is, like, I've heard from firsthand accounts that they have people in there that are straight rapists and child molesters, and they're essentially trying to, let God work on them in these groups instead of reporting them to the goddamn police. Yeah. Like, okay, if you really don't want to watch porn and you need a group to have someone check your history, you do you. Okay, whatever. If that's really what you want to do, that's fine. But when these groups then go onto protecting sexual predators,
that's when it's an issue.
That's a fucking problem. Yeah. And these people are not, because they're not licensed, they're not required I think you technically still are in certain states to report things, right? If you know something, you are required to say something. But I guess it wouldn't be firsthand knowledge or whatever. But basically, because they're not licensed, they're not being held legally accountable for reporting these people, and are essentially letting Jesus work on them in these groups. And it's just like, that's not okay.
Yeah.
Like, anyway, but that kind of brings us on to the next one. Is this is a firsthand one I saw unfold as well. When I was in youth group, I was maybe a freshman, maybe a sophomore. I was definitely not driving yet. So I was either a freshman or a sophomore. And this girl was the same age as me. So we're in the same group. So you're talking about somebody that's 14 or 15 max, right? And I used to spend a lot of time with her. She was on the worship team as well with me, because I was on even in those early years. So we would do sleepovers and stuff like that. Well, I started to notice at sleepovers that the youth pastor at the time, I'm sorry, not the youth pastor, that the worship pastor that was a part of our like team. He was texting her, like at sleepovers when I was there. Like, it was pretty late in the night. I didn't think anything of it.
Yeah.
You know, because that particular person, like, I grew up with. So, so I knew him like almost like a brother. So it's just like, oh, whatever. It's just, what are we gonna, Philip?
Yeah.
Just Philip. Okay. Well, so we'll call him Philip, and we'll call her, I'm gonna use Sally. I need another name. Leslie. Okay, that works. Leslie. So I'm noticing Leslie's getting texts from Philip, who, by the way, is 10 years older than her. So he's mid-20s, and she's 14, 15. And didn't think anything of it. Well, I start to notice there starts to become, like, just a lot of weirdness around these two people. And then it basically... Later, he comes out and says that he has been having a, quote, emotional affair with Leslie. And this did not get brought to the church as a whole like they did with the other one. They handled it, quote, behind closed doors. But essentially, nothing was done about it, right? Absolutely nothing. And it just kind of... we move on, but the part of it that's even, obviously that's already messed up. Like, what constitutes an emotional affair?
And what kind of emotional affair can you have with someone
with
so
a
much younger
14 or 15-year-old girl? But then the other thing is it was not an affair, it's grooming. Because even if he was, like, what you would call to adults an emotional affair, when that's an adult in a power dynamic as well, doing that with a 14 or a 15-year-old, that's not an affair. That's like the same thing. Rape is not sex. Like, yeah. You know what I mean? It's the same thing that I'm just like, you can't, that's grooming. And that's really disgusting. Like, now that I think about it, at the time, like I said, I just didn't even think anything. I was the same age as she was. But then she got villainized as a, like, church word that they like to use, Jezebel, for, like, sexual women.
I remember that, yeah.
And they, like, labeled her a Jezebel, and, like, she was, like, there was always these rumors going around that she's sleeping with all these people, and, you know, things like that. And it's, like, really fucking messed up for you to victimize and villainize, not just victimize, but villainize the abused child.
Do you remember because her parents attended the church as well.
In leadership.
Like, how did they react to that situation? Because I just think, like, right now, like, if my daughter at 14, like, if that was me as a parent, like, I don't care, I'm calling the cops. You know what I'm saying? Like...
Yeah, I agree with you. But they were a part of those meetings with... I forgot what I called him now, Philip. They were a part of the meetings with Philip about it. Like, it was literally basically, like, I obviously was not in the room when they talked to Philip.
Yeah. I
was there to hear firsthand from both Leslie and Philip's wife on what happened. But it was, I don't know what they told him, but I do know it was, like, behind closed doors with the pastor and then her parents. but then nothing was done. He continued to be the worship leader. He didn't lose his position. They didn't do, like, I get they did a whole public apology just because it was a public affair, but, they didn't do anything public, and they did nothing but villainize her like she was some sort of instigator at 14, 15 years old. You're a grown-ass man.
Like, how
does that happen? I
that's the part that I just can't, because if I'm in a church and I see that happening right now, is it just like different times, you think? Like, it's crazy to think that, like, so many church members were like, oh, that's fine. Like,
because multiple people knew about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Too many people knew about it. Like, to not have done something.
Here's something, okay? My parents knew about it, yet I continued to serve on that same worship team with that same person and continued to be treated like he was my brother. Now, I will say, personally, obviously he never tried anything like that with me.
Yeah.
But we definitely had more of a sibling vibe, so I just can't even, like, kind of makes me want to puke a little just thinking about it. But I'm just like, but now when I'm looking in retrospect, I'm like, that is predatory behavior. And it gets worse, though. The worst part is Philip, I don't know if I mentioned, probably should have, he was the pastor's son. That's important because then maybe a year later, they promote him essentially to youth pastor.
Yeah.
So not only, it was maybe a year later.
Oh, but then he went on to have another inappropriate relationship.
Yes.
With another
person in the
young
church.
girl in the church. She was probably like 14, 15? Probably like 15, 16-ish.
Yeah,
when they were having that.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
You told me that. I didn't personally know about that one, but you told me that.
Yeah.
And but they let him be the youth pastor.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding?
Like, no one objected or like.
Nope.
And I don't know. I just don't remember feeling like. I remember when we would talk about like him having that inappropriate relationship with the other girl, and like we would talk about it openly as if it was just like everyone knew about it kind of thing,
It's so messed up.
It's so crazy.
And to talk about like the indoctrination just is so fucking real. Leslie's parents are now back at that church.
Are they really?
Yeah. That's their home church now.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Fucking insane. Okay, the very last one we have was one we both dealt with very extremely together. Because we were both
right in the middle.
We were in the middle of a lot of this, yes. So,
and it just like I already cringe thinking about it because I just think about what I didn't do and what I should have done, in this.
Yes.
So many regrets here.
So how are we gonna cue this up? So I think. Okay, I don't even know how we start.
I mean, it's just two people though.
It is, but okay. Let me start with the school part. Do you know the school part or no?
No.
So before the situation at church, this female, we need a name for her.
I'm gonna write it down so I forget.
Okay. Why don't you just say what you want it to be?
Let's just call her.
Oh, you're saying so you remember.
Yeah.
What about Linda?
Linda. We'll call her Linda and we'll call him Bob.
Linda and Bob. Okay. So Linda, another grown-ass adult, Linda was in her 30s. She had been a part of this church for a very long time. I think she may have even been a part of like the founding members, possibly. So Linda was a youth leader. So as you can see a pattern here. Linda was a youth leader. So just keep that in mind. So Linda was also a teacher. Mm-hmm. She went to go work at a Christian school that the pastor's kids also went to, and her kids went as well. And she.
I was trying to hold it in.
You good?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's like scratching this whole time.
Oh my gosh.
Is this still scratching bad?
A little bit, yeah.
It keeps leaning over.
I know. It does not want to lean the other way, like, at all. You know what?
Okay, there we go.
Here. I wonder if this will work. You know the thing?
Yeah,
I think you can just clip it right there. It's the same distance.
There you go. Talk. Is this good? Can you hear me?
Oh yeah,
it's
really
good.
Damn, we should have done that the whole time. Okay, now we know. You just can't wear a shirt. Every time you and Kelvin both.
He has the same issues.
He has the same fucking issues, man.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So where was I?
Okay, back. It's okay. I was saying school. So Linda. Sorry, we're starting. So Antoine can take that. Okay. Okay. So Linda worked at the same Christian school the pastor's kids went to.
Okay.
So she was there for. I don't know the exact number of years because this was a long time ago, but if I had to guess, maybe 2 years, 3 years, not a long time at all. And the reason is first she got suspended for inappropriate relations with a student. What inappropriate relations included, I did not hear. Don't know, but apparently there was like this one kid at the school that apparently she had too close of a relationship with, and the school felt uncomfortable with the relationship. They had asked her to stop, she didn't, or not to their satisfaction, they suspended her, gave her a chance. Why this parent didn't sue, I don't know, but apparently because it's a Christian school, to be honest, parents didn't sue, I guess. So
this is the school she worked at before she went to this school.
No. This is the same school. So so she only worked at that one school.
Oh,
like,
dang.
Well, she might have worked at other schools. This is just the one I know about. Yeah. That was right before the incident you and I are about to talk about.
Okay.
So Linda worked at this school, and they let her come back after suspension, and still continued with whatever the fuck this relationship was. What? Yes, gets fired from the school because of this. So she gets fired for relationships with the student, relationship with a student. It was one male student. It was like one specific one. So what's crazy though is she was which still is actually, a pretty like high in that church leader's wife. So I can't even imagine that dynamic there. But essentially everyone knew she worked at this school, and so then they just were like, oh, well, I felt God calling me to homeschool my kids, and so they told everybody she resigned. But that's not the truth. I heard from people that worked at the school that was not the truth, that she got fired for inappropriate relations with a student.
Yeah, I did not know that part.
Yeah, so this happened before. Now, keep in mind, the church, the pastors, and everyone involved with youth knew this. It was public knowledge.
That's
like
crazy.
The party line to the rest of the congregation was, oh, she just wanted to homeschool her kids, whatever. But it's like, we talked about it. We all knew that that's why she got fired, was for inappropriate relations with the student. And we would just like speculate like what we thought, like all that entailed. I don't know. So yeah, that happened. She was still a leader in the youth group. Nobody did anything about that. Nobody said anything about that, and that was it. And so then she comes over to youth, and I know we all notice that she definitely like favors this one boy named Bob.
Yeah. So I remember thinking like initially, I'm trying to think back to like where my head was during that time, and I just remember thinking like, oh, they're really good friends. But then
that's weird for us.
Yeah, it's weird.
She's in her 30s.
Yeah, and then we started talking about like, we were like thinking like, yeah, she's just immature.
Yeah.
Like I remember like thinking through like, yeah, she's probably just immature. And then I remember like talking to you about like, hey, do you think it's weird? Like,
yeah.
And you're like, yes, I do.
It's fucking
oh my God,
weird.
yes. And that's when it kind of like clicked for us. We're like, okay,
there is something not right here.
But then how long did that go on for? It was like
years.
It started with like little things of like, so she would invite all of us over for like to her house to like have dinner or like pizza or whatever during the summer.
We were there all the time.
We were always at their house. And then it would go from inviting like maybe 10 of us to like 5 of us. And then it would just be like, I remember at one point I went over there and it was just like me, her, and him, while her husband's like at work.
You were higher on the list. I started ditching.
Yeah.
Ditched out way before it got that small. I was in the 10-person group and then was like, what the fuck? And I was out.
Yeah, I definitely was in. Yeah, there was a bunch of times when it was just 3 of us hanging out. And
so weird.
I just remember thinking like that it was weird, but also just like, I don't know if I didn't know what to do or like how to handle it, or I don't know. I just remember like thinking it was so weird that she was like so obsessed with him. And she would talk about him non-stop. She'd be like trying to cut his hair or something. Like, she'd always be like running her hands through his hair.
Oh God, it just makes me want to puke just thinking about it.
Did you ever talk to your parents about that relationship?
I did not. But I will say, so like the thing is weird is like I grew up in the church, so I knew her for a very long time. She was, for all of the years growing up, just a normal ass white mom. If we're just being like, she's just a typical soccer mom with like the, you know, maxi dresses, and that's who she was, right? With sandals, with straps, like that's what she was. Like for the entire time I knew her, until it was pretty much, I think, when the first relationship started at the school. She then started morphing into like wearing what like the teenagers were wearing. And
I remember
then
that.
she started like, I just remember when she got like, I was like, I had custom ordered these Vans that were, this was like back before you could go and get any color, right? Like I'd ordered these Vans that were the checkered, but I was gonna be cool and do dark gray and black instead of black and white. Yeah, I was that girl. But then she got the same ones. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like, and then like, I used to always like cut the tops of my t-shirts, like, that was like
I remember
that was like my thing. But then she fucking starts doing that shit. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Like, so it was like stuff like that. Like, and I get it wasn't just me. There was like the style. Everybody was emo back then. Like, okay.
Yeah.
But like this typical suburban, like soccer mom starts morphing into like an emo scene kid, like started putting highlights in her hair, and like it just then started gauging her ears, which that was like,
I remember that.
What is happening?
I don't know, like why didn't anyone stop? Because I know people knew about that relationship.
People didn't,
because she's really good. She was really good friends with his mom.
So that was the thing that I thought was even more predatory. Initially, because I saw this from a few different vantage points. I knew people at the school that she worked at. I was one of the main leaders in the youth at the time, and like I was on staff, so I kind of saw it from a few different angles. So it's kind of like this evolution. First, she started changing the way she dressed. She went as far as getting Captain America and Superman tattoos when she doesn't read comics. Like, she never read comics. It's not like a lifelong. I have no problem with those tattoos, but like, there was one reason she got it, because the kids thought it was cool. Yeah. At the time. Like, so all that to say, so it's like all this morphing starts happening when she had the first relationship, whatever it was, with the child at the school. But so then she starts honing in on this one kid, Bob, and so as she does that, people start saying something. People start going to the pastors and asking them.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So it gets even crazier. So people start going to the pastors and asking them. So much so that they do pull her and her husband into a meeting about it. After that meeting, before we had never seen Bob's mom or dad, after that meeting, all of a sudden, over the next few months, Bob's mom starts coming to church at the invite of Linda. And then Linda starts talking to Bob's mom. And Linda starts getting close to Bob's mom and going to get the nails done with Bob's mom. But then it almost gave her more of an excuse, because it's my best friend. And then all of a sudden, that's just her, Bob's mom is my best friend, and we do everything, and blah, blah, blah. Like, it definitely was a part of a predatory behavior. His mom getting roped in and being close friends. She was not close friends first. It was after her relationship started with Bob. And so that is going on, right? So then it kind of is like masking it to where several of the men in the church went to her husband and said something about it. And then her family staged an intervention.
What?
Yes, her sister, I don't know if you remember, her sister was actually really cool.
I remember her sister. I did not.
Her sister and her mom, and so I'm
How did I not know this?
They staged a fucking intervention.
Oh no.
And at some point, they roped in Bob's mom. Bob's mom and Linda had a big falling out over this. Like, she's like, basically like, leave my son alone. And so like, I don't know, and like, still like, I can't say firsthand like they were definitely having sex, or they were this, or they were that. I don't know.
No, I
firsthand
remember.
don't know.
No, I remember seeing him, like seeing her laying on his back, like him laying on the couch, like on his stomach, and her laying on his back, like
Gross. You dying?
no.
So, but yeah, like, so,
Yeah, I just remember seeing a lot of like.
And any time you were over at their house, was her husband home?
No.
He was never home.
And I would always get there, and he would have already been there when I got there. So it's like them two there, and then I'll come, and is like inviting me over to say like, yeah, he was here, but like
Roshel
was here too. So like nothing happened. But like I said, when I'm getting there, like he's already there. So I don't know what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like you're like their cover up. Almost.
Yeah.
Like.
But why didn't I? Because I know that I know that like a lot of people knew.
A lot of people talked.
I
about
just
it.
don't like understand. Because like even now, she's still friends with his mom.
So they ended up kind of like reconciling somehow. Like I don't know how.
Yeah,
after this, like somehow she convinced her like there was nothing going on. But I'm just like, we're talking years over this.
Yeah.
So much so that this kid, Bob, ends up going off to college. Their relationship continues. She drives to see him where he is in college. And then at some point, I can't remember who brought it up, like, but he hadn't had a girlfriend. Like, he hadn't had a girlfriend this whole span of time. And now he's approaching 20s. Now he's, like, approaching graduation, still not having a girlfriend. And, like, and so there was, like, a lot of, like, this is hindering him having normal, healthy relationships.
Yeah.
Now, I did hear that he ended up getting married.
Oh, good.
But I heard that she's somehow still living. Like, don't know how. That's what I heard. I don't know if that. You know what? Fuck it. Let me get my phone. I need to know now.
I know. I'm.
Well, we went and stalked. He is married now, but first person on every single thing. She's the one that's like the first comment on every single one of both of their things.
The wife.
I guarantee you she's somehow still involved in this.
That's crazy. I don't know what I could have done, but I just feel like, why didn't I, like, because I was friends with her. Why didn't I tell her, like, girl, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Because the person I am today, like, I would absolutely be like, what is wrong with you? I'm calling the cops on you. Like, and I'm not associating with you any longer, you know?
And now I did go that way, but here's the sad part. It wasn't even over the Bob Linda scenario that I stopped hanging out with her. I was just like so fucking irritated with her trying to be like 16 that I was just like, oh my God, I was just so annoyed.
Yeah.
And I was also like so annoyed with like all of the like copying of things. And then I remember like at one church camp they were doing like roasting all of like the leaders or whatever, and she was the one that dressed like me and everything, and they're like, oh my God, she's Jenna. I'm like, oh my God, she is living her fucking dream right now. Like, she drove me insane. So you can't tell. Sadly, at the time, it was not the child abuse that did it for me. But now that I'm leaning back to it, I'm like, that is a straight child predator.
Yeah. And like now that person's kids are of age and are getting married and having kids and things.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm thinking like, I could never, like, I don't know. You just think, I feel like I know my parents, and I feel like they're not capable of anything like this, you know?
Yeah.
And to think that like their kids are gonna have kids and like have to think about them being with this person who did something like that is just a little gross, you know?
Or like, I'm sorry, but like predators like that, they don't just stop. They don't stop. They continue to hurt. They continue to prey on children, and you're not doing anybody a service by not reporting these things to the police, or by having these people like lose their families, lose their job, like lose stuff that they should lose for a 30-something-year-old going after a 14-year-old. Like,
yeah.
That, like, there are consequences and there are fucking laws. And like, what's ridiculous is, you know, it's like preached about obeying the laws of the land and like shit like that, but then they don't even report abuse and crimes. So it's like just kind of insane.
Yeah.
But
sad.
yeah, and my reactions then versus now are definitely totally different on all these scenarios because like at the time, like we mentioned it on the money episode, like if someone's stealing from the church, it's just like, oh, God will deal with them. I mean, it's always the pastor that's stealing or the pastor's son or daughter,
family.
immediate family, but oh, God will deal with them. But it just makes no sense. So this was our tea.
Yeah.
That we have. At least I think most of it is like not as some. Not I guess some all of it's kind of serious. But
Yeah.
it felt
pretty.
It felt.
There's just it's almost as if like a lot of it's like you see so much of it that you're just like
Yeah, like you're saying, like pastors
so
having
used to it.
affairs.
Yeah, that's pretty common.
Happens all the fucking time.
At the end of the day, they're still men.
We are not men haters
No,
on
we're
this
not.
channel,
We're not.
okay? All right. Well, I think that's all we have for today, right?
Yeah.
All right.
think
Well, we're trying to get into the groove of this, but I think like subscribe.
Yeah.
I think would be
If
the
there's
thing.
anything that you guys are interested in hearing,
Drop a comment.
yeah, let us know.
Yeah.
We will.
I feel
Give
like
you all
this
the
isn't
tea.
even like the tip of the iceberg
No,
of tea.
definitely
Like,
not.
We have so much tea. So if you like story times, tell us.
Yeah, because I could definitely go on like
We could, do
a pretty good story time of like just series of events of things that have happened that are just
gosh.
wild.
I love it.
So that's it for today. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you guys on our next episode.
Bye.
Why not anymore? Bright colors in my eyes.